I discovered my wife was cheating for 24 years, gave me kids that weren't mine, so I exposed her and the entire cheating circle in front of their spouses. Part 1. Once I was blissfully unaware and content because I thought my marriage was strong. However, reality shattered my illusions when I discovered that my wife Dunia was unfaithful and deceptive. I'm John Miller, but my friends call me Jay. I'm dedicated to physical training, spending 5 days a week at the gym. Standing at 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 192 pounds, I prioritize self-care. 8 years ago, I made a bold choice to leave the corporate world and start my own successful company. Meanwhile, Dunia continues to work for a well-known company, one of the 50 largest. She has dedicated an impressive 24 years to the same company, starting as an OT analyst a month after our wedding. About 5 years ago, she transitioned to a training unit instructor to keep up with evolving technology. Her job requires attending at least 20 days of educational programs annually. At 46, Dunia looks stunning at 5 feet 8 inches tall and 118 pounds. She doesn't fit the expectations for a mother of 2. Each morning, she joins 6 other women from our neighborhood for a challenging 6-mile run at dawn. Now our 22-year-old daughter, Emily, proudly graduates from Florida State University. Following her mother's path, she became a dedicated first-grade teacher in Naples. Running is a family activity, with Emily joining her mother's running group at 14. I'm delighted she appreciates the beer I brew, my hobby, and even joined a beer club in Naples, which I happily attend with her whenever possible. Our 21-year-old son, Kent, is a recent graduate of the University of Florida, passionate about continuing his education. Although he aspires to work in my business, I've made it clear he must gain 5 years of corporate America experience first. I believe real-world experience is crucial for his growth. My wife dislikes beer and finds its aroma unpleasant in our home. I strategically plan my beer brewing during her trips, like her current one to Dallas, giving me the perfect opportunity to craft a refined English brown ale. Life seemed to have peaked, but little did I know, significant changes were on the horizon. Last Wednesday at 8:30 p.m., Bobby, a member of my beer club, asked if I could pick him up from the airport. Without hesitation, I agreed. While waiting at the baggage claim, I noticed 3 people who turned out to be colleagues of Dunia's. Curiosity led me to wonder why Dunia wasn't among them. I called her on the service line, an unusual move as I usually contact her on her personal mobile phone. When I called Dunia's office, her answering machine informed me that she would be out of the Dallas office until Wednesday, teaching classes. She mentioned that she wouldn't be home on Thursday and Friday and instructed to leave a message with a promise to return calls on Monday. Approaching Bobby, I explained my confusion, and he suggested I talk to Steve, a fellow member of our beer club, and a detective in the local police. Deciding to address the situation, I called Dunia. During our conversation, I conveyed a desire to hear her voice. In response, she expressed anticipation for the moment when she could hug me. She mentioned that her Friday flight should depart early, and she was looking forward to falling asleep in my loving arms. I asked if she could come, and she replied affirmatively, stating that she had to stay and fulfill her duties. She emphasized that it would be unfair to neglect them, and reassured me of her love, mentioning that she would see me on Friday. The revelation that this was the first time Dunia had cheated on me was unsettling. Despite the late hour, I contacted Steve for a beer, and we discussed our upcoming meeting. I confided in Steve about my suspicion, and he sympathetically offered his help. I believe Dunia is cheating because, meeting Bobby at the airport, I saw 3 of Dunia's colleagues leaving with luggage, suggesting they spent the week with her. Despite her voicemail saying she'd be in Dallas until Wednesday and on vacation until Monday, she told me she'd teach classes until Friday. Steve listened patiently and suggested I reach out to Frank Jones, who held a high position and might have more information. I expressed gratitude to Steve and mentioned my plan to contact Frank the following morning. As the sun rose on a new day, Frank Jones unexpectedly appeared, prompted by Steve. After recounting my story, I faced Frank's inquiries. After a brief pause, Frank posed a thought-provoking question. Had I been happily married for over 24 years, and was I truly ready to reveal the truth? Intrigued, I inquired about the reasons behind such a question. Frank cautiously replied that, based on his experience, most marriages in such situations ended in divorce. He presented a series of questions for me to consider. How much information did I really want to obtain? How far into the past should we delve? What was my budget for the investigation? And was I prepared to work with the information we discovered? Shocked, I sat in silence before finally expressing, "Frank, I need to know every last detail, when, where, and with whom. Please, as far-reaching as possible. I'm willing to lay out whatever it takes to find out the truth. If I have been deceived, I want to understand to what extent." In response, We decided that Frank should contact his reliable colleague, a private detective from Dallas, who could assist in studying Dunya's background. Additionally, one of his team members would review the training schedule. I was instructed to reach out to 3 teachers I saw on the way from the airport. While awaiting their responses, I meticulously checked the house for any clues, uncertain about what to look for and where to start. I excluded the living room, dining room, kitchen, Emily and Kent's rooms from the search, choosing to begin with Dunya's dresser. I found nothing unusual among its contents, although everything seemed familiar. Upon opening the closet and observing numerous boxes, I decided to shift my attention to the bathroom. Unfortunately, no hidden information from Dunya was found in the bathroom. Returning to her closet, I remained determined to find some clue. Starting with hanging clothes and meticulously going through shoeboxes, I searched for anything strange or suspicious. Despite thoroughly searching our bedroom, the guest bedroom, the study, the garage, and the attic, I still couldn't comprehend anything or gain insight into the situation. Around 5 p.m., Frank finally arrived and swiftly set up surveillance cameras in all bedrooms, the office, and the kitchen. Additionally, he installed a voice recorder. After taking all security measures, we went to the airport, where we eventually located Dunya's car. The trunk had a GPS system, and a voice recorder was discreetly placed under the front seat. Frank and I had a light ale at the house, and he briefed me. Dunya's class schedule varied in duration from 3 to 5 days depending on the location. For instance, classes in Dallas lasted 3 days, starting on Monday and ending on Wednesday. Tom, Paul, and Bev flew out on Sunday afternoon and returned on Wednesday evening. Teaching materials were delivered to the specified location a week before the scheduled class, but teachers weren't responsible for their placement and transportation. Each location had designated employees for those tasks. As I sat there trying to control my anger, I thought of my father, who always stressed the importance of keeping anger in check for clear thinking. Annoyed, I stormed into the kitchen, expressing my frustration. She had been lying to me all along. There should be consequences for this. Turning to Frank, I asked if he found anything during my search. Unfortunately, I replied that I found nothing suspicious. The only thing we noticed was that Dunya frequently washed her clothes. After discussing the issue, we decided that Frank would intercept her bag at the airport, and I would find a way to turn off the washing machine to delay her from starting laundry immediately. Before leaving, Frank mentioned his contact in Dallas being at Dunya's hotel and planning to talk to him in the morning before calling me. After Frank left, I realized I couldn't sleep in our bedroom and opted for Kent's bed. Needless to say, I slept very little. Trying to maintain my daily routine, I went to the office. We arranged to meet at my house later that day. Frank arrived at 2, carrying a stack of documents. The report from our Dallas employee arrived via email with attached photos. Frank showed me a picture of 6 people gathered at a restaurant table, 3 women and 3 men sitting in pairs. Curiously, Frank asked if I recognized any of these people. I stared at the photo before responding. The only one I can identify is Dunya. To get a better look, he handed me individual photos of each person. I studied their faces again in silence, taking a few minutes to scrutinize the details. Handing Frank one of the photos, I mentioned the person seemed strangely familiar, but I couldn't recall where I had seen him before. While having our meal, Frank shared intriguing information. Video cameras were installed on all hotel floors, facing the corridors. We began examining the next set of pictures, showing our group leaving the restaurant, entering the elevator, and eventually disembarking on the 7th floor. Interestingly, the women went to room 7A7, and the men went to room 7009. On Friday morning at 10:29, photos depicted 2 men leaving room 7009. Subsequent images captured them exiting the elevator, walking down the hall, and leaving through the front door. These pictures conveyed a sense of a friendly or professional relationship rather than a romantic one. According to Frank, they went to a nearby restaurant for lunch, each covering their own bill. Later, additional photos at the hotel showed them carrying luggage from the room to the elevator, and then each went to the reception desk to complete the checkout process. With a serious expression, Frank turned to me and asked if I was absolutely sure about revealing all the details. Without hesitation, I confidently affirmed my decision. Frank hesitated for a moment, maintaining unwavering eye contact, and then continued. Meanwhile, I received another folder with information about the situation. I won't delve into the conversation details, but I learned that agents from Dallas entered rooms 77 and 7009, meticulously recording every step alongside the cleaners. It was revealed that rooms 7007 and 7009 were connected by an internal door. To gather evidence, sheets were removed and sent to the laboratory for DNA analysis. Additionally, used glasses were carefully packed for fingerprints, and the garbage underwent thorough examination. According to the agent, there was a strong closeness smell in the rooms, and traces of use and stains were found on all 4 beds. To determine if Dunya actively participated or just observed, we must await the results of laboratory tests. Frank and I find it hard to believe otherwise, considering her likely involvement in these actions. It's unpleasant to witness the deceptive and unfaithful behavior of the woman I married. As for our next move, she should be back tonight. We decided to start by turning off the washing machine. We moved it and disconnected one of the wires connected to the motor. I believe Frank assigned me this simple task to give me time to process. Back in the kitchen, Frank suggested taking a DNA sample from me and asked if I could find a comb with the hair of each of the children. Perplexed, I asked why. He suspected that the children may not be mine and expressed my confusion. "You wanted full transparency, didn't you?" I mused before suggesting that we needed to collect a piece of hair before the first haircut, needing only one strand for each person. He confirmed that this would be enough. Frank carefully packaged my sample as number 1, Kent's as number 2, Emily's as number 3. We managed to take a strand from Dunya's home, numbered as 4. Tomorrow morning, these samples will be sent to the laboratory. Frank has a contact at the airport who will try to intercept Dunya's luggage, delaying her return due to the necessary procedures related to the missing baggage claim. After addressing these issues, our conversation shifted to how I could behave normally around Dunya. Could I warmly greet her at home, hug and kiss her? Could I patiently listen to her made-up stories about the trip? Could I invite her to dinner tomorrow and engage in close activities with her? How long and convincingly could I continue to deceive her? Frank mentioned that his team needed ample time to collect and analyze evidence, warning that it could take several months to realize all the consequences of Dunya's actions. Could I stay calm for this extended period? I promised him that I was ready to do whatever it took, because my ultimate goal is to uncover the truth. Frank asked if it was possible for me to go on a 3- or 4-day business trip out of town. Thinking about who I could visit in the shortest possible time without arousing suspicion from Dunya, I smiled, looking up. I said I wanted to visit one of my longtime clients in St. Louis. I planned to inform Dunya about my departure on Monday morning, with my return scheduled for Thursday afternoon. I asked Frank why he wanted me to leave, seeking an explanation. Frank clarified that if Dunya had any hidden motives, she might avoid suspicious actions while I'm away to prevent arousing doubts. There's a chance she could lower her guard, potentially making a foolish move. I sensed she had a great weekend and is eager to resume a relationship with someone. Unfortunately, her office lacks video surveillance, but we wondered if there's something she always carries that we can use to our advantage. Perhaps we could discreetly attach a small bug to it. Any suggestions? After pondering, I suggested her briefcase. Frank admitted it's not a perfect solution, but better than nothing. He'll leave a bug with me, and in the evening I can attach it to her briefcase. It's time for him to go. Am I ready for the show? I replied with a simple, yes. As Frank was about to leave, he mentioned that if I had the chance tonight or tomorrow morning, I should check for liquid stains on Dunya's underwear. Good night. If you get a chance this weekend, call me and remember to stay calm. I settled on the back terrace with a porter in hand, letting my thoughts wander. Apart from Dunya planning to do laundry early Saturday morning, nothing made me doubt her intentions. Just before dawn, my morning was interrupted by a phone call from Frank. He informed me that Dunya's luggage reached the laboratory successfully. He emphasized the need to remain calm. At dawn, her typical travel fatigue mixed with disappointment over the airline mishandling her belongings. She was unhappy, especially missing 2 recently bought pairs of trousers, but she said everything else could be replaced, and essentials were safe in her carry-on luggage. Seeking solace, she hugged me, expressing love and joy at returning home. She shared her longing for my presence during her absence. After a gentle hug and kiss, she headed upstairs for a relaxing bath. Meanwhile, I discreetly attached a bug to her briefcase and sat down in front of the TV, thinking about those cherished moments we shared. Recalling Dunya's arrival, I couldn't shake the feeling of immense love from her. Despite travel fatigue and mild luggage dissatisfaction, she was thrilled to be home. Comparing my efforts to her impeccable work, I realized I needed to improve and match her level. It became clear that I needed to hone my abilities so that she would not see that I was behind the facade. I decided to fix the situation, put aside all doubts, and climbed the stairs preparing for bed, where we'd find solace in each other's arms. I think Dunya overslept Saturday morning, as she didn't have any worries with the laundry. Before taking a shower, I involuntarily began to examine Dunya's underwear in a basket of dirty laundry, feeling uneasy as if I had invaded her personal life. I didn't expect to closely inspect the close area of her underwear. Though not an expert, I found nothing unusual. After a bath, I went downstairs, made coffee, fetched the newspaper, and waited patiently for Dunya. When I was pouring my 3rd cup of coffee, she came into the kitchen with a calm expression on her face, wrapped in a bathrobe and smiling. I greeted her with a cheerful, "Good morning, sleepyhead." Seeing her well-rested, I remarked that it looked like she was ready to conquer the day. I offered a cup of coffee, to which she gratefully smiled and expressed her desire for one. I jokingly mentioned that I should make luggage mistakes more often, if it leads to such delightful vacations. After our shared breakfast, I went outside to attend to my own tasks. A few hours later, she mentioned her plan to go to the grocery store and kindly asked if I needed anything. Politely declining, I said, "No thanks." While she was out, I planned to organize and transfer a batch of English brown ale from the primary to the secondary. During dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, we had a lively conversation, sharing our impressions of the past week and discussing upcoming plans. I spoke about my recent trip to St. Louis, and she expressed happiness at being home after exhausting travels. She mentioned if her luggage was still missing by Wednesday, she'd go shopping for replacements after work. To my relief, she hoped no one would find out about it, except for those trousers she's worn for ages. I grinned and continued to share with her the details of my latest batch of English brown ale. In the end, we decided to wrap it up, and I made 2 cases of my homemade beer before heading to St. Louis. I know the journey takes more than 8 hours, but what can I say? I sincerely love to drive, as it allows me to be alone and reflect. Usually, my thoughts revolve around my business, but on this trip, I was thinking only about Dunya. On the way, I dialed Frank's number and told him about my weekend. Although he had no new information, he said he would keep in touch. Lost in thought, I was surprised to realize that 4 hours had already passed. I dialed Frank's number again, deciding to get down to business. I asked him to tell me honestly what his intuition says. Taking a pause to collect his thoughts, Frank replied that he discussed this issue with Joe in Dallas, and they were sure that Dunya had been having numerous affairs for a long time. We proceed from the fact that it is impossible to simply observe many hours of close meetings without active participation. In addition, their undeniable closeness to each other further reinforces our suspicions. They showed no signs of fuss or nervousness, did not hold on to each other, but went into different rooms without attracting attention. People have been developing such confidence in their actions for years. I feel intuitively that you may be unhappy with our conclusions regarding this group, which includes your wife. According to Frank, our man reported that these 6 people discussed classes, their families, and showed amazing ease in communicating with each other. It is noteworthy that they bore their own expenses, deliberately avoided sitting next to the same person during meals, and communicated with each member of the group. It is safe to say that this group has maintained its connection for a long time. They maintained a friendly atmosphere in the hotel rooms, but once inside, they threw stormy parties. Frank's last words to me were about the need to make a decision regarding Dunya and the other members of that group. After that, I contacted my lawyer, Michael Davidson, the best divorce lawyer in the state. After giving him brief information, he convinced me that Dave Ford would definitely contact me. After settling into a hotel room, I called Tanya to inform her of my safe arrival in St. Louis. Then I contacted Fred to confirm our planned golf game. At about 9:30 p.m., Frank called to see how I was doing. I told him that I had already given his name to my lawyer and that Mike would contact Dave Ford on my behalf. Frank found it funny and mentioned that Dave Ford's reputation alone could intimidate any lawyer Dunya approached. I'm tired, and I really want this situation to end. If they want to play violent games, then I am ready to show my skills. On Tuesday, I spent the whole day with Fred on the golf course. Around 1 on Wednesday afternoon, Frank called me and asked about my schedule. I told him that I was free until the end of the day and planned to go home on Thursday morning. At about 2 p.m., Dave Ford contacted me and I informed him about the current situation. I felt relieved when he gave his approval of my success. He highly praised Frank's company, considering it among the best. After learning my plans, Dave inquired about my desires. If Dunya proves unfaithful, I'll seek a divorce. However, to fully grasp my disappointment in Dunya and her partners, I must wait for Frank's team's investigation to conclude. I suggest starting the divorce process, citing infidelity as the basis. Our conversation shifted to gathering evidence during the upcoming class and discussing my ability to maintain the appearance of a normal life for several months. Dave informed me about the possibility of a quick, no-fault divorce in Georgia. Accusing her of infidelity would be more profitable, especially with our children being adults. After further discussion, I realized I needed to carefully consider my approach to divorce. On Wednesday evening at 9, there was a sudden knock on my door. To my surprise, Steve and Frank were standing there. I asked about their unexpected visit, and Frank replied with unpleasant news he wanted to share personally. Steve didn't know the purpose, but Frank thought it would be good for me to have a friend at this conversation. It's up to you whether Steve stays to hear the news. Despite the seriousness, I wanted Steve to stay. Seated, I met Frank's eyes. He revealed that test results confirmed Dunya's active participation. Shockingly, traces of all 6 individuals' activities were found on one bed, even though each woman had her own bed. Our evidence strongly proves that every woman had close relations with all 3 men on their beds. Identifying Dunya was possible with a DNA sample taken from our house's hair. "Jay, I'm sorry for how things turned out," Frank said. I was stunned, trying to grasp the depth of the situation. Time seemed to have stopped, and I sat in silence, closing my eyes to regain calm and suppress the growing rage. Finally, I plucked up the courage and opened my eyes to utter words of disbelief, doubting anything could be more terrible than finding out my wife was involved with 5 other people. Frank, with a slight cough, revealed the unthinkable truth. 2 of these men turned out to be the biological fathers of our children, Kent and Emily. I wasn't their father. This news hit me like a ton of bricks, and in an instant I jumped up, shouting for an explanation. "How can this be? My children weren't mine. I will have a certain benefit from this opportunity as I will be the one to use it. This woman has been in an extramarital relationship for more than 24 years, deceiving and manipulating me." They sat in silence, watching me walk up and down the room in agitation. My thoughts were racing, trying to figure out the news I had just learned. My once perfect world was crumbling before my eyes. How do I navigate this situation now? It was impossible to imagine that neither Kent nor Emily were my biological children, not to mention that my wife had a long-term love affair with one of the partners throughout our marriage. Frank accurately assessed the current difficult situation. It was clear that the consequences of this would be severe. I planned to show my ability to play hard. Steve and Frank watched as my emotions gradually changed from shock, disbelief, and confusion to sadness, loneliness, loss, anger, rage, and finally determination. Time seemed to freeze. I walked back and forth, not realizing how much time had passed. It became clear that Frank and Steve came to me in St. Louis not only to provide support but also to prevent impulsive acts. When I regained my composure and pulled myself together, their purpose became clear. During the conversation, we discussed my position and plans. I made it clear that she must answer for her actions. Despite the lack of sleep, their presence provided much-needed support, as I doubted I could drive a car without them. Having received the necessary evidence, we carefully selected the most effective measures to influence them. A divorce from Dunya would have been a loud and humiliating affair for her, although I admit I would have to experience embarrassment as well. Over time, the truth that Emily and Kent had different fathers would become widely known, exposing my wife's unfaithful nature. In the state of Georgia, both parties have the option to file for a no-fault divorce, which means filing, waiting for 30 days, getting a divorce, and dividing the property. In the case of filing for divorce based on infidelity, the process becomes much longer, taking months to set the court session date and provide evidence. Despite my strong desire to bring Dunya to court for her infidelity and force her through all the court proceedings, my friends Steve, Frank, and Dave convinced me of the need for a no-fault divorce. They said it would be faster and more economical, and at the same time, I would be able to embarrass Dunya and her partners. Now all I had to do was decide when to proceed with the divorce. In Atlanta, Steve, Frank, Dave, and I gathered in Frank's conference room to discuss what we know, what information we still need to get, what methods to get it, and what actions need to be taken to bring them to justice. Curiously, I asked Frank if Dunya had been involved in any suspicious activities while I was away in St. Louis. Frank replied that Dunya had done nothing wrong and had not conducted any inappropriate phone conversations. Continuing the conversation, Frank said that we were able to trace all the actions of a group of 6 people over the past 5 years. Interestingly, 2 members of the group constantly booked adjacent rooms, although they were not always the same people. Although most often all 6 people were present in the room, there were cases when the composition of the group changed. At times, one woman appeared next to 3 men, forming a group of at least 4 people. I did not expect such a development of events, and therefore began to show my despair by damaging the table with force and sharply calling it cheating. I demanded that Frank thoroughly investigate the gang of 6 people, including Dunya, and find out all the details. It became clear that my knowledge of the situation is limited. I wanted to discover their marital status, the duration of their parental relationships, and whether the children of these women were fathered by their husbands. Additionally, I needed information on whether they all worked in the same organization, their places of residence, and other details that could be uncovered. With Dunya's schedule in hand, Frank obtained information about upcoming classes and their locations. This allowed Frank to establish contact and develop a detailed plan, including installing cameras and bugs in hotel rooms. Frank understood that evidence collected this way couldn't be used in court, but his goal was to achieve a guilt-free divorce requiring crucial information. An interesting detail in Dunia's calendar was that she had exactly 3 classes scheduled before our upcoming 25th wedding anniversary celebration. Notably, the 25th anniversary fell on a Sunday, and Dunia's last class in Orlando ended on Friday. Observing this group, I firmly decided that our anniversary would mark the end of our communication. I chose not to participate in any celebrations with her, as her gift would not be appreciated. At that moment, I would cease being a deceived spouse, and she would begin facing the consequences of her deceitful actions that persisted for over 24 years. In that moment, I would turn my suffering into her worst nightmare. Dunia would deeply regret the day our paths crossed, because I considered her guilty of numerous lies endured throughout our marriage. A week passed, and we gathered in Dave's conference room, eagerly awaiting news from Frank. As I settled in, I couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey we all experienced together. The group, known as the Gang of Six, included George C. Thomas from Richmond, Virginia, Henry S. King from Little Rock, Arkansas, Charles K. Nixon from Columbia, South Carolina, Joyce D. Hopkins from Miami, Florida, Catherine G. Williams from Knoxville, Tennessee, and, of course, Dunia. Fate brought them together over 24 years ago during a training program for new employees of the same organization. When the Wednesday of Dunia's last class arrived, Frank, Steve, Dave, and I gathered around the conference table, ready to hear the latest news. Last week in Washington, Dunia and Henry occupied adjoining rooms, while the other 4 members of the group were scattered on different floors of the hotel. It was discovered that Dunia and Henry, in adjacent rooms, slept in the same room. At the same time, no woman entered or left the man's room, and there was never a simultaneous exit from adjacent rooms. During the whole day and early evening, they spent a lot of time together, but after 10 in the evening, they gradually dispersed to their rooms. Only after 2 in the morning did they return to their rooms, except for Thursday evening, when all 6 spent the whole night in adjacent rooms. Their conversations and interactions outside the rooms resembled those of professional colleagues. They discussed accommodation, meals, attended games and performances, and shared news about their children's classes. After 24 years of living together, keeping their secrets hidden has become a familiar thing. Once again, Frank's agents discreetly entered the room, posing as a cleaning crew. Fortunately, close contacts occurred only in adjacent rooms, making it easier to collect hair samples and fingerprints from each participant for further analysis. Sheets from each room were carefully collected, along with samples of women's underwear. Thanks to irrefutable DNA evidence, we successfully uncovered the truth. George turned out to be Emily's father, and Chuck was Kent's biological father. Dunia faced difficulties associated with unprotected closeness, having many partners, making it impossible to determine the true father of her children. In Richmond, Virginia, George C. Thomas had been married for 24 years with 2 adult children. George and his wife were unaware that they would soon find out about another daughter. Similarly, Henry S. King from Little Rock, Arkansas, had been married for 23 years with twin sons who turned 21. On the other hand, Charles K. Nixon from Columbia, South Carolina, tied the knot with his high school sweetheart and lived in marriage for 25 years, resulting in a son. Chuck is on the verge of revealing the truth that he has another son. In Miami, Florida, Joyce D. Hopkins, happily married, is getting ready to celebrate her 25th wedding anniversary. Joyce is a proud mother of a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, Catherine G. Williams from Knoxville, Tennessee, has been married for 23 years and is the mother of 2 daughters and a son. All members of the friendly group called the Gang of Six have been married for over 23 years and seem content, except for Chuck, who recently discovered the painful reality of his wife's infidelity. We're curious about whether any of these 3 men could be the fathers of Joyce or Catherine's children. It's very likely that at least one of them is the biological father, and their spouses probably want to know the answer too. Frank hopes to find out by next Wednesday, although I'm not sure about his plans. In a brief meeting at Dave's office on Wednesday, Frank informed us that classes in Orlando last only 3 days, which is quite surprising. Can you believe it? Next Thursday and Friday, the group plans to spend time before its anniversary. Dunia's complete lack of respect for me is indisputable. She will be responsible for the consequences. When I came to my senses a little, Frank reminded me that I am not the only spouse whose children have different biological fathers. Henry is the father of both Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son. Catherine has 2 daughters whose fathers are George and Chuck. Surprisingly, Joyce is the only woman among all who has at least 1 child whose father is her husband. Henry is the biological father of Joyce's daughter and Catherine's son, and George is Emily's father. One of Catherine's daughters is also the child of Chuck, who is her biological father. It's all pretty confusing, and I feel like I need a flow chart to keep track of it all. Even though I know my marriage is over and I've gone through all the stages of grief, I find the strength to create the appearance of a loving husband. It's become a kind of game for me. I pretend to be affectionate while secretly planning how to ruin my future ex-wife, Dunya, who cheated on me. It's pretty funny, considering she's been cheating on me for over 24 years. If she can lie to my face for so long, then I will definitely be able to pretend to be a devoted, caring, albeit forgetful husband for several months. Frank's team planned to carry out the same procedures in San Diego as in Washington. They were going to scrupulously examine the collected records and evidence, hoping to find all the missing details. With unshakable confidence, they expected that everything would happen the same way as in Washington. Personally, I couldn't contain my excitement about the upcoming trip to Orlando and was happy to think about how to turn their life into an absolute nightmare.